Rev up your engines!
Well, if you think the car company's on your side, guess what? You got another thing coming, baby. Federal judge says you have a right to repair your car, but of course the automakers are fighting it tooth and nail. Now, Massachusetts voters passed the Right to Repair Act back in 2020. That's 5 years ago. Automakers sued to keep it from going into effect. But it goes further. A judge dismissed that lawsuit and let the law go into effect 4 years after it was passed. Now, if you don't know, the Right to Repair Act requires automakers to share all the car's telematic computer data with its owner so independent repair shops can service and repair your vehicle. I'll give you an example of one company that tries to skirt that stuff, and that is Stellantis, Fiat, Chrysler, Ram, right? I can work on them because I'm a professional mechanic. I pay for the right to access that data, right? With my fancy $5,000 plus scan tools. Even if you bought that tool, you couldn't access it because you're not a mechanic and you didn't join the society, and they're just trying to put layers so you can't get information to make it harder, so you have to go back to the dealer so they can rip you off repairing your car. Now, of course, the reason you want the right repair is because then owners of out-of-warranty cars have more choice, and dealerships can't have a monopoly on car repair, which is what they want, because nowadays the dealers make a large share of their profit from repairing cars, not from selling them. The lawsuit was done by the car manufacturer, but here's what they call themselves. You gotta watch out for these scumbags. They're always hiding under names. They call it the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, but that is the car company's trade association. So that's not really what it is. What it is they want to stonewall anything that keeps them from charging you a bunch of money to fix stuff that you or your independent mechanic can do. And they try to technicality, but this judge said that the Massachusetts Right to Repair law clearly does not conflict with any federal law, including the Motor Vehicle Safety Act or the Clean Air Act, and it should be enforced immediately. Now, it looks like they're going to appeal this one too, the car manufacturers, right? But, hey, you know how that goes. Lots. It's been 4 years it's been going on, and it's still going on. They'll fight it tooth and nail in the courts because they want to keep as much money as they possibly can, keep the information away from you, from private mechanics like me that can help save you money fixing your cars, under the guise of some legalese nonsense like, oh, it violates the Motor Safety Act or the Clean Air Act, blah, blah, blah. Well, Stellantis, for once, has an interesting idea. They have patented an advanced transmission fluid drainage system for automatic transmissions. If you don't know, when you try to drain the fluid out of your transmission, if you got a drain plug, you take it off. The majority of the fluid still is inside the vehicle. That's just how it works. It's in a torque converter, different parts of the transmission. Sometimes you're only changing a third of it. Sometimes it's 1/6 of the fluid that's in there, right? But their patent, they haven't made them yet, but their patent is they are going to have a regular mechanical pump inside the transmission to pump the fluid, but they're also going to have a secondary electronic fluid pump. And that when you want the fluid changed, you got to have a guy like me with a fancy computer, and we command it what to do, and we command it to pump the old fluid out. Then it will pump the old fluid out, and then you can measure how much fluid came out, put the same amount of fluid back in. Now, I find this fascinating that they have a patent for this now, Stellantis, because they say, no, this changes your fluid better. But, I always laugh. You ask any of these manufacturers, and they try to pretend, oh, that automatic transmission fluid is lifetime. You never need to change it. Yeah, why are they making a patent so you can change it better? Because, of course, any fool knows you really have to change the stuff. And they could all make them this way if they wanted to, but they don't want to make them easy to maintain. They want them to break down when they're out of warranty. I find it interesting that they made a patent for this. They haven't actually built one. Let's see in the future. This is the beginning of 2025 now. Let's say you're watching this thing 5 years from now. Hey, do they have these transmissions out there whether they'll drain themselves or not? My bet is they won't, because that goes against planned obsolescence, and they're all going towards planned obsolescence, not away from it. The interesting idea, though, I gotta say, why not just put it in there and then it can drain itself up and fill it up? I mean, geez, our swimming pools have stuff like that, auto drains you can switch on and off. You think, and that's just water sitting there. I think they should have done something like this years ago, but like I say, they're going towards planned obsolescence, not away from it. Now, here's a warning. If you're thinking about buying a car that was salvaged, flooded, whatever, don't believe what people tell you because they might be lying through their teeth. Here's a perfect example that happened in the United States. This guy bought a flooded and frozen out Chevy Silverado. The people selling it said, oh, this is insurance fraud. This thing really didn't have that much damage to it. Go ahead and buy it. You're not going to have any problems, right? Well, he starts fixing the thing up, and then he got an email from the ex-owner who wanted to tell him the whole story of what happened. One, I'm not a fan of buying any flooded vehicles because of all the electronics in modern cars. So this guy said the insurance company had put a line on the pillar of the car, say the water got this high, and the owner actually contacted him and said, no, it was a lot higher than that. The whole thing was underwater. It went in the lake. So yes, it was underwater, but one, it was fresh water, and two, it was only there for a very short period of time. Now, if you live near the ocean, you never want to buy a flooded car because salt water will destroy everything over time. I had a customer in Houston bought one of those, and 2 years later, the whole car went bananas. They cleaned all the water off, and it ran okay for 2 years, but then after that, the whole thing fell apart. Fresh water is a different story, and of course, fresh water that you're only in there for, a few minutes isn't as bad as it's sitting there soaking for days or weeks or whatever. It's fresh water that's just sitting there, right? The guy originally bought it. He bought it at an auction for $5,300. And he thought, well, I'll sell the parts for it, right? But then he said, hey, I'm going to try to fix it. So he ended up spending a total of $8,000 parts, and that includes the original price that he paid for it. And he's driving it around. Now, he's kind of lucky, and I don't know what's going to happen years down the line. It was fresh water, but still, it can destroy all kinds of stuff through corrosion over time, right? But the moral of the story is, if you're looking at one of these cars, don't believe anything anybody tells you. Well, the water got this high. No, it didn't. It got this high. The whole thing was underwater. Do not believe what people tell you when you're buying a salvage car like that because they'll lie through their teeth just to get the money out of it. You never know. He got lucky that it's still running. I'd love to see what happens to this truck 2-3 years down the line because like my customer in Houston, hey, 2 years later, the vehicle was junk and he towed it to the junkyard. Well, it's now pretty much official. Honda and Nissan have ended their merger talks and say they will, quote, continue to collaborate, whatever that means. Now, I guess the crux of the matter was Honda pretty much wanted to take over Nissan and have them as a subsidiary, but Nissan didn't like the idea. So this whole merger thing went, which to me makes a lot of sense because I could never understand why Honda would want to affiliate themselves with a second-rate car manufacturer. Honda's a pretty much first-rate car manufacturer, right? But Nissan's had troubles for decades and decades and decades. So it kind of makes sense from Honda's perspective. Why should they merge as an equal with a company that's obviously well beneath them in terms of quality and sales numbers and stuff like that? So now, instead of having a merger, they're going to collaborate. Whatever that means. So the people were wondering, gee, why would Honda want to merge with them? Well, you don't have to wonder anywhere because they're not going to. Well, we all use a lot of gasoline, right? Well, Chevron has decided to lay off 15 to 20% of its workforce. That is a lot of people. Chevron employs more than 40,000 people across the world. They're headquartered in Houston. I used to be there, and I've seen their stuff. I've visited their facilities and stuff. It's a humongous corporation. And I myself, when I visited, I thought, do they really need all these people? Right? Because I have visited these oil companies in their engineering departments and their research and development departments, right? And I see all these people. And one time I said, how many engineers you got in this building? And I said, well, we got 1,500 engineers in this building. Like, do you really need 1,500 engineers in this building? Couldn't like maybe 100 be good enough? Aren't they smart enough to figure out what they're doing? But they have so much overemployment in these corporations, it makes your head spin. I mean, I went into one time and I was making a video, right? And when I'm making a video, they all got up from their desks, they came out and they were watching me rant and rave about what I was talking about, right? Because they didn't really have anything to do. They're sitting at a desk in front of a computer screen, so they all came out and watched me. Like, well, I guess the jobs couldn't be all that serious, right? It really makes you wonder. It's probably very easy for a company like this to lay off 15 to 20% of their employees because a lot of them really don't do that much of anything. thing. I had customers years ago. Chevron had a big layoff. One of my customers worked at Chevron, and he was worried that he was going to lose his job. Well, he didn't lose his job, but he said, now I got to do this other guy's work. So I got to do twice as much work as I'm doing now. But he was still working there years later, so yeah, obviously he could do it. Now, let's face the facts. Most of the time, people aren't doing that much. Now, if somebody works on an assembly line building cars, okay, yeah, they're putting a piece on the whole time. They're always working, right? But when you're at a desk job, all you people out there with desk jobs, I'm sure you will agree with me that most of the time, you're bored out of your mind and you're sitting there trying to find something to do. I'll give you a perfect example. One of my customers worked for Enron. Yes, that Enron in Houston, right? And I said, what do you do all day long? He says, I make a 6-figure salary. And most of the time, we're not doing anything. So at the time, Enron had one of the biggest broadband internet connections. This was way before fiber optic cable, right? But they had fast speed. So he said, we pay these World War II fighter plane games on the computer while we're not doing anything. I said, don't you think that's kind of not that viable of a job, Is it going to last? He said, oh, yeah, we all know it's baloney, but we're getting paid, and when it ends, we'll go find another job. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.